Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Hello, Black Rock City. It's a real pleasure to be here. And yes, my topic today is political revolution. My name is Manu Koenig. I am a founder and CEO of a startup called Civinomics, where we are actively trying to develop a software-based solution for revolution, and really for the future of governance in our society. I've been working on this for 3 years. We're based out of Santa Cruz, California. Go Santa Cruz. So it's an online voting platform, and more than that, it's a way for communities to organize and make decisions for themselves. So why do I want to talk about revolution? It should be obvious enough to everyone in this room, but our world is burgeoning, right? We have people in every part of the world who feel the need for a change and who are actively rising up. I mean, there's Syria, Egypt. June saw 40,000 people march across the Bosphorus in Turkey. Brazil, our own Occupy movement was one of the greatest coordinated movements of people in history. We saw on October 15th, 2011, in 900 different cities, people around the world marched. 900. And when they broke it up, there were 2,000 Occupy camps. So the need is clear. But we should be careful because revolution is messy. It's a really dangerous time. And all you have to do is realize this is think back to the French Revolution. Now, the French are on their 5th republic. That's 5 changes in the Constitution. And pretty much every change was a little messy. The first one was particularly bad, right? So after they throw out Louis XVI, they have some wonderful time known as the Reign of Terror. This is what the people got for their trouble. And so bad that 12 years later, Napoleon comes along and declares himself emperor, and people are kind of happy for a change of pace. So you look at what our friends are dealing with in Egypt, and it's going to be a long road, and it's going to be a difficult road, and there's got to be a better way to do it. We've got to have something that can facilitate revolution a little bit better. And I think the answer is software. Not just any software, but community-based software. And I think we can all experience, or all relate to the power of community being here at Black Rock City. And we know that when communities are empowered to take control of themselves, people can make a difference. So, this software facilitates communities, and I guess the way I started thinking about this was with Afghanistan when they held the first elections. There's so much fraud and corruption or apparent fraud and corruption in the process. It made me think, why is the government holding its own election anyway? They're the ones that are interested in the outcome. Why isn't some independent international organization facilitating the election process? And wouldn't it be great if you would have you'd still deal with issues, but you would have a much freer, more balanced process of elections. And why not facilitate these elections all the time? Because really, the current system of, voting used to be really difficult, right? This is why we have a system of representative government, because you had to, you had to get people to the voting booth, you had to distribute information on paper about what you were voting on, and you then had to count all the ballots. That took not weeks, but maybe months to do. And so it was a very difficult process to facilitate, and as we can see, still is. So if we have an independent organization that's dedicated to holding free and fair elections, that would be one step in the right direction. Because the real problem that we deal with today in the Western world is representative government. And again, the reason we have representative government is because we elect lawmakers, to go to places, to have conventions, things like Burning Man, and hammer out the Constitution of the United States. Let's, get some good Jamaican rum, get some strong coffee, and figure out what we want to do with this country. Sort of like what we're doing here. And we don't have to do that anymore. We can have conventions of people from every part of the world, every race, every gender, every age, communicating asynchronously. Right? People can sign on in one time zone, say what they think a new law should look like, and then 3 hours later someone can log on after work and give their input. So there's a better way to facilitate that. And the reason that's crucial is that our representative system of government is the current failing point. Because every 2 years, a member of the House of Representatives has to raise on average $10 million in order to get elected, every 2 years. So how much lawmaking are they really doing? And where's that money coming from? Well, it's coming from the existing economic power structure. And so that's what is judging our representatives' opinion of what laws they should then help pass. And so if we're going to get around that block of the existing economic power structure enforcing our system of government, we're going to need a way to vote directly on things, to move past our representatives. And we're going to do that through online voting. Now, online voting is, there's some challenges to it, no doubt. There's, fear like, okay, this is going to create one state, where else we're going to overly aggregate things. It's going to be open to manipulation. It's going to be difficult, or it's going to be easy for someone to seize power. But first of all, there's some technology out there that will allow we could actually have different voting platforms that would actually aggregate votes from each one of those platforms. So every city, every town could pick their own voting platform that they wanted to use, and then they could vote not only on local issues, they could vote on state or national issues, and some aggregator would count them across all the different things. That's one possible way to get around that problem. Another thing, a trend to look at, though, is just that government, or I should say technology, is generally been a democratizing force. If you look at what you've seen in Twitter, or on Twitter in Egypt, right? It's empowering everyone to report the news, to communicate what's going on, to gather people for rallies. Things like Wikipedia. This is a community of people democratizing information and creating a community of scholars that are dedicated to sharing information with the rest of us. I've had to learn to program in order to move this project forward. It's been a great pleasure. I've been using something called Stack Overflow, which is a community of programmers. You can go on, ask any question about how to do something, how to code something up, and people will answer your questions. So why don't we have the same thing for politics? A community of people at every level, in your city, your state, globally, dedicated to working on policy and thinking about and writing that policy and then distributing it on the internet for us all to vote on. Let me talk about a few trends that give me confidence that this is going to come to pass. The first is government transparency. So the first thing Obama did when he took office was he issued an executive order saying, my government is completely dedicated to transparency, and you at the city, state, and national level, or city and state level should be too. Now, not everyone always listens to what Obama says, but there is actually good reason to have faith in government transparency. One big one is that municipal agencies, stuff like the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, who provide water and power and sewer for San Francisco, if they want to have a big public infrastructure project, they better ask the people for some input, because they can't go spend $9 billion and get it wrong. They're going to get fired. So they have to go to the people anyway. And actually, my company has helped facilitate this for the SFPUC, the San Francisco Municipal Utilities. We went and talked to 2,000 people on the streets with iPads and asked them what they thought about some proposed sewer changes. Exciting stuff. But you're going to see increasing competition between government agencies to be more transparent, right? Iceland tried to crowdsource its new constitution, The process has faltered a little bit, but they had 995 people that they elected, I think at random, to participate in writing edits to the Constitution. They then took those proposed edits, distributed them through Twitter and Facebook, and asked a greater number of people to comment on the process. So it's just good government, and you're going to see more and more. There's 400 cities across America today that have adopted just open feedback platforms. So it's not quite the same as direct voting, but it is still governments wanting to listen to what we have to say. Thank God. The second trend that you see is crowdfunding. And that's why governments will also listen to us, because crowdfunding is an incredibly powerful force, right? I mean, the temple out here is crowdfunded every year on Kickstarter. And what you're going to start to see more and more of is not just crowdfunding for art projects, but crowdfunding for civic projects, right? A group of neighbors who say, hey, we need a high-speed charging station in our neighborhood because we got a lot of electric cars now. These are $50,000 installations still, but a group of 100 people get together, maybe they can make it happen. People crowdfunding gardens for their schools or new street signs or parklets. And with more and more bankruptcies coming up, with Detroit $18 billion in debt, you're going to see governments not only going to the people for their opinion, but going to people because people can facilitate more civic projects, sometimes directly through their own funding, through crowdfunding. And the third trend that you see is ubiquity. What matters is getting people to vote at the local level, right? So if a local community like Black Rock City can go out there and we can adopt a number of different online platforms to facilitate voting. The government has something called our White House, whitehouse.gov. Obama's administration has something called wethepeople.org. And you can essentially go petition the White House to listen to something. And it takes, I think, 100,000 signatures to get a response. But still, it's there. And you can fork that project on GitHub, you can bring it to your own city, and you can start implementing it. There's some other solutions that you have to pay for. Those are typically the ones that are working directly with government agencies. You could do that. You can use petitions. Petitions are not all that structured, but they're still useful, and they're real. And I think this is the point that really needs to be made is if we're going to facilitate voting online, we're talking about a massive amount of participation. Let me give you an example. So in the 2012 elections, 120 million Americans voted. 90 million who were eligible to vote didn't vote. It's a lot that didn't vote, but 120 million did. When was the last time you saw an online petition with 120 million signatures, right? There still tend to be in the hundreds of thousands or the low millions. So if we actually want to facilitate major policy initiatives, you have to have a large majority, 57% is 120 million in the United States. So let's say you need 57% rate of participation. That's easier to facilitate at the local level. It's easier to facilitate in your city or community or Black Rock City. And that's why it's going to start there. Because if you have a city of 60,000 people, maybe you only need 20 or 30,000 people to start voting on these things. So that's very doable, especially because it's a localized population. But let's go back to some things that we might want to actually pass directly. There's something called the move to amend. This is sort of emerged out of the Occupy mentality and the desire to say corporations are not people. So this is an amendment. This would be the 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution, and it would say corporations are not people. How many of you would agree with that? Just raise your hands. Great. How many of you have voted on the move to amend proposition? Okay, great. So if we want these things to happen, we need to express our opinion. The move to amend petition has 300,000 signatures right now. Their next goal is 500,000. But we need to get to several million, 100 million, if it's actually going to have a direct effect on our government. And tell me this, you think if 100 million people voted on a petition, our government would ignore it? I think they'd be in hot water if they did that. And the reason we need an online platform that's greater than the existing petition system is because we need to vote on a lot of things. We need to make a lot of decisions really quickly as a society. I believe we can do it, but we need to talk about 57% spending on the military budget in this country. We need to fix the economy, education, transportation. There's so much we need to change. And we can't, the way our legislators aren't doing it, we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to do it directly. And we're going to need an ongoing system of elections, of people coming up with ideas and voting on it. And if you think about it, that's exactly what Egypt needs too, right? They needed not just to be able to hold elections for representatives, they needed to be able to hold elections for they needed to be able to have a greater crowd-based participation on what their constitution actually looks like, what economic reforms they needed, because those questions didn't get addressed. Instead, they elected representatives, and it was sort of the same repressive system of representation that we largely experience here. So, how am I doing on time? Sorry, I forgot. Okay. So, better Revolutionware. That's what we're developing. And that's it. How can you participate? Well, if you are one of the, an activist in your community, if you're someone who really wants to get out there and get this started, you can. I mean, whether or not you're a programmer, whether you want to, like I said, fork the code base on a petition site, or if you just want to start petitions in your community, I think one key thing to understand is your community in your local town or city is not going anywhere. It's changing, maybe whatever, slowly, but it's going to be the same people. So no matter the system that's used, it's really we that have to change our method of interacting with the system and the way that we participate. So when you see something that you care about, support it, and the systems are going to get better. But if you consider yourself a mover and shaker, if you consider yourself an activist that wants to take this on, this is your art, right? We all have our art that we practice here at Burning Man. If your art is community and politics, then take this on. We're creating a platform where you can do that too. So I invite you to come to our site, Civinomics, and give it a whirl. If you have ideas for how to improve it, please tell us, join us. This is a communal process of developing the software as well. And otherwise, what can you do? Yeah, when you see petitions, when you see this system, as you see this system developing, participate in it. Vote. 120 million people. What do you guys think the voter participation rate would be if we held elections for BlackRock City right now? 90%? 10%? That's right. No one has internet access now. Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's a great point. That's a great point. Because community is important, but we need to be able to facilitate this community beyond BlackRock City. Right? When we all leave here, how can we improve BlackRock City? Every year the festival is growing. How many people do we want it to grow to? Do we want it to be 100,000? Do we want it to go back to 15,000? That's something we could vote on. Do you have improvements for the city? My friend was saying, God, we need more toilet paper at night. Right? So, and then how can we continue to spread Burning Man to the rest of the world? These are conversations that our very strong community can continue to have online after this event. We can continue to stay together. And we can, that's exactly the sort of voting system we're talking about and that we can participate in today. So, Civinomics.com. Thank you.